to this computer. So we do record just the basic part, and then we'll have a group for the more personal stuff that's not recorded. So now we are recording. Thank you for that. You're always right on top of that.
Okay, so now we have...
And also, if you're not speaking, perhaps you could mute, because the chairs and stuff, you can kind of hear that. So
sorry about that.
Kani, oh yeah, thank you. So now we introduce ourselves. I will start with myself. My name is Karolina Kubiak. I'm calling from Poland, north of Poland, city of Gdańsk. I am a member of local XR Extinction Rebellion group, but I'm also a member of Empathy Circle team, Empathy Circle work group. So yeah, that's me. Next on my screen is...
And record or not record? You want to be in a recorded?
Yes, I accept recording. Next on my screen is Sophia. Would you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Sophia. I'm from Sweden, Malmo. I've been taking part of these empathy circles since this summer, I think, pretty regularly. Yeah.
Do you accept recording?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you. David, would you introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is David. I am currently located in Alabama, United States, and I do accept recording.
Okay, thank you. Richard.
Hi, I'm Richard, originally from the Netherlands, and now at the moment I'm in Leipzig. That's like slightly south of Berlin. And I consider myself an artist and a storyteller. And for practical purposes, I'm sitting in the same room as Hugo. This is me as well. So it would be nice if we are in the same room, that we kind of don't get collide with the audio.
Okay.
That you are in the same room? You want to be in the same room? Did you say you want to be in the same room?
They are in the same room.
Oh, they are. But they want to be in the same breakout room. Is that right? Okay, good. Thanks.
Okay. Next is Bill.
Hi, I'm Bill. I'm in Northern California. Member of the Empathy Tent. I'm, taking some trainings with XR. I'm a retired special education teacher, and it's okay to record.
Okay. Hugo. I'm not sure if I pronounced correctly your name.
Well, nobody does. That exosound coming from Richard's computer.
Yeah, one of y'all is going to need to put on some headphones, or both of you maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think you should be in the same breakout room.
I mean, it's kind of trippy, but
I'm going to walk to another room. Anyway, so I'm from the Netherlands. Yeah, you need to work a little bit. I'm at the moment in Leipzig, as you know, because Richard is there. I know Richard from NVC, Nonviolent Communication, which is also about empathy.
Okay, do you accept recording?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Elle.
Hi, I'm Elle. Thanks for that little giggle. That was fun. It sounds like you're on the moon or something. I'm in Lancaster in England, and I've done a few of these before. Well, 3 maybe. And what was the other thing? Yeah, and I'd prefer not to be recorded in the breakout room. That's it, isn't it? Yeah?
Thank you. Elena, would you introduce yourself? Elena? You have to unmute yourself.
Okay. My name is Elena. This is my son. I'm in Helsinki, Finland, and I'm involved with the XR here, and I'm studying NVC and I've never been to an empathy cafe before, but I'm really interested. This.
Okay, you're a little bit breaking. Do you accept recording, Elena?
Yeah, I think it's okay.
Okay, thank you. Marta.
Hi, my name is Marta. I'm in Cork in Ireland, part of Extinction Rebellion here. And yeah, I've been coming to these for a couple of months now.
And you accept recording? Okay, thank you. Bob, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Bob Brown from Thousand Oaks, California, USA. And it's always a great joy and life-giving experience to be part of an Empathy Cafe. Thanks.
Okay, do you accept recording?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the last one on my screen is Kenny with iPhone.
Hi, Tani. It's pronounced Tani.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, thank you. It's my first time that I joined this Empathy Cafe. I'm located in Switzerland, in Sion Valais. I'm also engaged with XR since 1 month, just starting. And yes, let's see. And about recording, I can't say nothing because I don't know what for is the recording. What is recorded and what for?
We record for educational purposes. We want to show how the empathy circle works, and in this case also share our view on culture.
Okay, so I agree.
Okay, thank you. Edwin, would you introduce yourself?
Okay. Edwin Rutch from the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm good with recording. And I guess I was the last person, so let me move on to the next step here. So there are some people who weren't familiar with the empathy circle process, so I'll just give a very short introduction. The best way to learn is just to take part and learn by watching others. But here I'll just go through our slideshow real quick. So the empathy circle process is you can have 2 to 7 participants take part. Here in this example is 4, which I find ideal, just to give everyone a chance to have a lot of time to speak and have a variety of perspectives. There's 4 basic roles. There's the speaker role, the active listener role, and the silent listeners, and then a facilitator role. And in this process, the facilitator role, the facilitator just keeps everyone in the process. They'll do the timekeeping, and we'll be doing 5-minute turns for speaking. And they will invite the first person to be the speaker. And so someone will volunteer to speak. Sometimes it's good if you start by someone speaking to the facilitator, just to sort of have it as an example of how it works. So you get a little bit of a sample, have it modeled. And so a volunteer will start. They will select who's going to be their active listener. And then they speak about the topic that's at hand. So here, the speaker chose the active listener, and then they'll speak for, for an idea. You want to share an idea or two, and then pause, and then give the active listener a chance to reflect back the understanding of what they're saying, the speaker is saying and feeling. And if the speaker says too much, it's hard for the listener to reflect back. So, be sure to pause after, speaking, like I said, an idea or two. The active listener, you're listening to the speaker to understand what they are saying and what's important to them. And so you just give your full attention to the speaker, and you're like a companion to them on their journey and their exploration. And when the speaker pauses, you want to recap your understanding of what they said and how they feel, about it, by reflecting the essence in your own words of what they said. You can summarize, you can paraphrase, you can even say back the speakers, some of the speaker's words to them. And you want to hold off saying, putting your own, ideas, judgment, analysis, advice, or sympathy, or, asking questions, because these actually sort of block the speaker from moving along on their own internal journey. And just do the best you can. If the speaker doesn't feel heard, they can say it again. And I'll show here after the active listener has done their reflection, the speaker, that you check did you feel understood to your satisfaction. If you didn't feel understood, you can say it again, perhaps in different words. And if you do feel understood, you can continue sharing. And again, speak a bit, an idea or two, and then pause to give the active listener a chance to recap their understanding of what you said. And then again, the active listener will reflect that back. And the cycle, just continues like this for the time allotted. Or if the speaker doesn't have anything else to say, like you just speak for a minute or two, you just can't think of anything else to say, you say, well, I feel fully heard. And that just indicates it's time for the active listener to become the active speaker, that your turn is over. And then also, once you get your final reflection, then you can just turn it over, just say you feel fully heard, and then the active listener becomes a speaker. And at that point, the roles change. The speaker selects the new person to speak to. That person becomes the active listener, and the process continues like it did before. The active listener will reflect back what they hear the speaker say to their satisfaction. And we just go around for the time allotted. Some tips, real quick tips here. As the speaker, it's up to you to choose who you would like to have be the active listener. It's always your choice. But for inclusion, it's nice to pass around the turns to give everyone, time. So if in the first round somebody hasn't spoken, it's good to select them. But it is your choice, so we always give you as the speaker the choice. Speaker tip number 2: if you don't have anything to say, you can pass on your turn by saying, "I have nothing to say," and the active listener will recap and say, "Oh, I feel fully heard." And then the active listener becomes the speaker. It's just a way of passing on your turn by staying within the process. And again, tip is as the pause often to give the active listener a chance to reflect back what they've heard. And as active listener is if the speaker is saying a lot, then you're the active listener, you can ask for them to pause to reflect back. Because sometimes it becomes a lot, and you start feeling overwhelmed. Say, "Oh, can you just pause and let me reflect that back?" So you can interrupt in that case. And then, when recapping, again, refrain from injecting your own thoughts, responses. Just reflect back your understanding. And our topic today is share your vision of the culture and society you desire and would like to live in, or share whatever is alive in you. You always have the choice of sharing, whatever you would like. That's sort of up for you. So that's a little bit of a recap, and we'll go into our groups now, and that's try to get you into the groups as soon as possible. So kind of whip through this as fast as I could. And I think we're ready to go. And we'll end about 15 minutes before we'll go for 15 minutes before the end, and then we'll come back into this room to debrief. And we're going for we have about a little bit over an hour and a half left. So, okay, see you in the rooms. You should be going in there any second. Okay, so everyone, except Hugo, knows how to do this. So whoever would like to start, feel free to start. Am I hearing everyone? Okay. Well, I will start then. I'll speak to the yawner, the person that's yawning. Oh, I got to keep the time. Let me get the stopwatch here.
Can you hear me?
I do.
Yes.
1 second. 500 set. Okay, start. Okay, I'll speak to Sophia. Okay. So I just want to check in a little bit of how I am. I had, mentioned this to you before, that my partner, just someone who is almost like a father figure to her, just passed away. So there's a lot of sort of grief. Just happened last night. So there's a lot of grief here in the house.
Yeah, you just want to do a general, telling about how you're feeling, and your partner's sort of father figure to her has passed away yesterday or this night, I think you said.
Yeah.
And you're feeling grief about that.
Yeah. I don't feel so much, but I wasn't very close to this person. But, for her, it's really, it's a heavy, kind of a lot of grief for her. So she's really having difficulty dealing with it.
Yeah, you don't feel so much, but you're watching your partner go through this grief, and it seems to be hard for her.
Yeah. So besides that, I'm excited about this topic of looking at the culture that we desire. And something I've been wanting to focus on is really articulating what a culture of empathy is. And this is sort of like a little step towards that. Oh, one on the side. Thomas, I don't know, somebody came late, so they're out of luck. So this whole sort of a quest in terms of looking at what the vision is of the culture we would like to live in fits in with the other project that I'd like to really articulate what a culture of empathy is, and so I'm even thinking that this group, maybe the next time we would be even more specific, instead of just being the culture we would like, is like, what would a culture of empathy look like? So I'm kind of thinking about that and just wondering how that lands for people. So I don't want to like push people into it, but it's kind of what I'm interested in. So.
So you are wanting to define exactly what the culture of empathy means, and you're hoping that these groups and these empathy cafes will help you define that, and maybe get it even closer to what a culture of empathy is. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it. It's that I would like to articulate the culture of empathy. This group is a bit more broad in general. So I would like to kind of move the group in that direction, but I don't know if people are interested in that. So I have some curiosity if people are interested in kind of looking specifically, like, what would a culture based on empathy look like? What are the principles and values of it? And
yeah, so you really want to go deep into what a culture actually would look like, a culture of empathy, but you're not sure whether or not people are interested in that.
So I'm kind of curious, like everybody here, what you think about it. So I might bring it up some more.
Yeah, you're curious to hear what we think about it.
Yeah, sometimes people say I'm kind of pushing things in a direction. And I don't want to be pushy. So, but it is what it interests me. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you have some worry about being pushy about that.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thanks.
Thank you. I was just wondering, do we keep the time or do we just talk?
I'm keeping time.
You're doing that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I know what to look for, who
Yeah.
to look for. Richard?
Yes.
Yeah. What's alive for me right now is that yesterday I got rejected by a guy who I was seeing for about 4 months that I really was starting to like. And he basically said that he wanted to start and go into a serious relationship, but he wasn't interested in doing that with me. So yeah, I'm sitting with that.
So what I hear is that yesterday you were dating a guy or seeing a guy for 4 months, and that basically yesterday he said that he is not into a relation with you, and you perceived it as a rejection.
Yeah, exactly. I think the hardest part was that I thought that he wasn't looking for anything serious overall, but it sounded, it's kind of, yeah, hit me in the heart when he said, I want a serious relationship, but I just don't want it with you. So yeah, that was hard to hear.
So it was hard to hear, and I can imagine that it's also painful to hear that he didn't reject the relation on itself, but he said specifically that he didn't want a relation with you.
Yeah, exactly. And that sort of triggered a lot of not enoughness. I'm not lovable as I am, and why don't guys want a relationship with me? What's wrong with me? All those kinds of painful stories. Yeah.
So what I hear is that it triggered quite some thoughts in you, which has to do with self-value or value and being loved and.
But I'm also sort of proud of myself because if this was sort of 4 years ago, I would have been totally destroyed by this. So I can also sort of, it hasn't been like I've been crying a lot. I was sad. I cried a little bit, but I'm also able to look at it realistically, think about it realistically. So yeah, there is some prideness. Do you say that?
Yeah. So what I hear is also there is some prideness. I also see you smile now. That there is that you feel proud that if you imagine that this would happen 4 years ago, it would bring you completely out of balance. And what I hear now is that there is some kind of balance, that although you cried, there is some kind of ground or something where you can stand on, and that's some prideness with that, and also some joy what I see in your face.
Exactly. And I can also sit with the feelings of being unlovable and sort of like, it's okay to have these feelings. They're not dangerous. They're not going to hurt me. I'm not so scared of sitting with these feelings because I know that they're feelings from my past. It's not about me being unlovable. It's just feelings. So kind of comforting also.
Yeah. What I hear is also some consciousness, that there is this feelings and related with these thoughts about being unlovable and or being lovable, and that there is some consciousness that these are feelings and these are related to the past, and that you have some peace with them, with those feelings, or that you are able to look at them as feelings and somehow see their beauty.
Yeah, that was a kind of a cool expression. I don't feel that I don't feel peace with it, but I feel that I'm not scared of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so what I hear is that you don't feel scared for those feelings. You're
Yeah,
able to look them in the eye, so to say. Or
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go into Edwin's questions later. Yeah, I thought the time was up. Thank you so much. I feel heard.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we know. I'm gonna ask Hugo, who's sitting a room further. Would you like to reflect back on me what you hear? So when I think about the question, like in what culture would I like to live? I think for me, kind of the core thing would be that it values human connection. That kind of human connection is kind of a core thing, and also kind of that it values connection. Yeah, I think that's for me. That it values, and also that it provides tools and structures and ways for people to connect, and that things happen from connection. I think that would be the core for me for kind of a culture of that I want to live in.
So the culture you want to live in is where people share this value of connection. And you also wanted to have tools and other things that would help to create this connection.
Mm-hmm. And also kind of what really intrigues me the last couple of years, I think, is also finding this intelligence, or kind of as soon as people connect with each other and are truly connected with each other and opening themselves up, that something bigger gets a voice, or that something bigger than that's not just the sum of things, but that something deeper can express itself. And I'm highly fascinated by that, and I can also imagine if there would be a culture that kind of allows this listening, not just to single persons, but also this listening to deeper things that are beneath single expressions or single people. But there is this capacity of a society to hear the deeper voices and to also acknowledge them and name them as voices from the whole, or something from voices from the bigger community.
Why introverts connect is sharing things together.
Seems like your connection, maybe Hugo, your connection seems to be, perhaps you could stop your video. It would give you more bandwidth.
Intelligence, which is more than just the internet. When people start to zit een geluid overlast. Ik heb het geluid op. Ik ga eens kijken of ik wat anders ga het eens proberen. Interesting, because it was still white here.
The two of you could just be right next to each other. You could be together in the same camera.
Yeah, for this part, yeah, it sounded like such an interesting thing. Like, okay, we are here sitting together, but there is the technology up at the moment kind of diminishes the physical connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the closer you are, the more the technology is kind of not working. So if you know, like, I think you are like 8,000 kilometers away. Edwin, it works perfectly fine,
Yeah.
but Hugo is like 5 meters away, is kind of...
Do you want to maybe shut down his connection, just sit next to each other? Because
Nah.
No, okay. Okay, so
Hugo, is your connection on again?
Yeah, my connection was wide before, so I'm not sure why. There was a disconnection. Anyway.
Okay, you might turn on the video again.
Can see if that works. Got this beautiful heart here beside me. So you were talking about, well, the intriguing thing is that when more people connect, that there seems to be a knowledge coming up and intelligence. And you're wondering what a culture would look like that is going to use that intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's also kind of how, what I find interesting, if there is a culture that doesn't use hierarchies to let a group of people express themselves, but kind of more like group intelligence or group heart or so. I think that would be a cool thing, that there is some structures and some facilitations that allow for dynamic groups to express themselves, and not so much for hierarchies as a way to let a group of people express themselves.
So you're looking for structures that not based on hierarchy, but that do help to create some dynamic processes. It seems that you really don't like that hierarchy to be the main thing behind that structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for now I feel fully heard. So thank you.
just a question, do either of you have earbuds? Because that would help. We do get a little bit of an echo here. It would help reduce the echo.
I don't have an earphone of headphones at the moment. So.
I have some headset, but the problem is I'm not sure about the quality of the microphone, but I'll try. We'll see what that will do. Okay. Let's see.
That's okay. I didn't know it was a big issue. I thought if you had something handy, that would be. So, oh, there you go. Oh, you might want to close the door too, because it's you guys are just getting that echo between you.
Yeah, how's the sound now?
Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead. Just select whoever you want. We'll just see how it goes.
Okay.
Who are you selecting? Who do you want to speak to?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me talk to you.
Okay, I'm listening.
One of the cultural things that I've been looking at is
okay. Hold on. There is this echo. Is there any chance? Like I saw you had the door open. Is it possible to close the door between your rooms? Or
let me see. I'm going to move to another room yet. Is this better?
yeah. So yeah, that helps.
Okay. I don't have light here yet, but let's start talking.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, why can't you sit together? Because that would help the circle a lot if there wasn't technical issues. Is there any reason why you can't sit with each other?
Want to sit next to me? Richard?
Well, right now it's working. So now,
good.
so it's hope for the best. Yeah, because it does disrupt the flow when there's all these technical issues.
Today I've been talking about what happens when somebody did something that the other person doesn't like. And I did something a few months ago that some people find very disturbing. And when I talked to them, they asked me, "Can you explain what happened?" And then the moment I started to explain, they kind of said, "Well, you're taking down responsibility. You're not taking responsibility. You're trying to apologize, and you're defending yourself."
Okay, let me see if I can reflect that. So you're looking at, do you say things that upsets people, and then you start dialoguing about it, trying to explain yourself, and then they say, you know, why are you not taking responsibility? So they're kind of like questioning you about your actions.
Yeah, and it's on the one hand they're asking for an explanation about what happens, but when I do, they see it as defending myself or making excuses.
So on one hand, they say, "Hey, why are you doing this?" But then when you try to explain yourself, they're sort of criticizing your explanation, saying, "Oh, you're just defending yourself," and so they kind of, it sounds like maybe you don't feel like they're really listening to your explanation.
No, and I saw something similar happen with some teenagers where they tried to explain something, and as they said, you know, you're just making excuses. And it seems to be very disconnecting, because when something happens, I want to explain what was the reasoning behind it. And I saw the same thing with these teenagers. I want to explain it, but it seems to disconnect instead of connecting.
So giving an explanation of why you did what you did is creating more disconnection rather than connection. And it sounds like you're just kind of wondering why this is and trying to understand it, like what's going on here.
And it includes is, why do people ask for an explanation when the moment it's being said, they say, you know, I don't want it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like they say, "Give me an explanation of why you did this," and then they don't really want to hear it. Then you're just like wondering, well, what's going on there? Why are they, yeah, why?
And I also noticed that I find it very frustrating, because if the explanations of what happens offer us some insights about what we can do differently the next time.
So maybe you have some hope that if you give your explanation, you can kind of understand the situation and then kind of head off kind of these conflicts in the future.
Yeah. And the thing I'm not sure about is, how can you tell something that's alive with you or that happened, or give some explanation without the other person seeing it as some form of defense or not taking responsibility? And I notice that it really frustrates me that this is apparently at this moment a dynamic.
And so this dynamic where you try to explain the situation, people don't really listen to it. And it's just very frustrating, this whole dynamic of people really not listening to explanations.
Yeah, and including that, I don't see a solution at the moment. Maybe just first accept that this dynamic exists.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it happened to me this time. I've seen it happening to a lot of other people too, that this whole dynamic when something is disturbing people.
So you see this whole dynamic out in the society where people try to explain themselves, they ask for an explanation, but then they don't really listen to it. And it seems like there's no way out of this. There's no kind of solution to this problem of this sort of disconnection that's happening,
And it's almost like the people who find things disturbing or who are in pain just want the other person to say, you know, I'm stupid or I'm terrible or whatever.
Oh, So instead of asking for an explanation, what they're really saying is, just tell us why you're so bad and why you're so stupid. Is really, they just want people to not really explain, but just to sort of apologize or kind of belittle themselves.
Yeah, I like the word belittle. It's almost like they want the person who did something disturbing to say, you know, oh, yeah, I'm really sorry. I was wrong. It was completely terrible. And it doesn't feel equal.
So what they really want by asking for an explanation is they want the person to say, "Oh, I was wrong. I'm terrible." And it just doesn't feel like a real equal sort of a relationship when that's what they want. That's the 5 minutes too.
Good. I feel heard now. Thank you.
Okay. So if you want to mute, there you go. Thanks. So I'll speak to Richard. Yeah. So in terms of what Hugo is saying about relating that to a culture of empathy, for me, that dynamic is just a lack of empathy between the sides. So if there was an empathic approach would be that perhaps Hugo, if somebody says, "God, can you explain yourself?" that Hugo would explain himself, and the person that he's listening to would do empathic listening to try to understand, and that it would be mutual. That then they would do exactly what we're doing here. Would be, I think, a way to unravel that problem, that knot.
So when you hear the story from Hugo, it reminds you how empathy could kind of help people to listen to each other, and kind of the circles that we do here. Now that could be a way to listen and to avoid this thing, what Hugo said.
Yeah. And and it's like, how do you set that up? Because I know, almost could guarantee you that if they spent enough time in an empathy circle, it would unravel that conflict. But how to bring people into sort of accepting that that mindset, that empathic mindset, and that's where a culture of empathy would help. If we had sort of a model, like if the politicians were doing empathy circles to work things through, if there was a larger acceptance within the society for empathy, then people would say, oh, they would naturally reach out to this, empathic process to work out their problems. They would say, oh, we're in this conflict. We need to use empathic listening or something to work this through. And they would have a reference and support. They would have that support that you're talking about. They would have that tool set that that you mentioned. And so it's kind of like the question is how to, one is to see that as a value, then how to really create that.
So what I hear from you is that you have this vision that if politics would kind of set the example, kind of by doing empathy circles themselves, that could be an interesting way for people to see how it works, and that it doesn't only work at the political level, but that could also work as an inspiration for people's personal lives.
Yeah, and then I also agree with you about that sense of connection. That with what he's talking about is a real sense of disconnection between the sides, and it's the same thing you were talking about. That in the culture that you envision is where that sense of connection is a value, is a cultural value, and there's a support for it. And that there is something sort of magical that when people really connect with each other, when they really understand each other, it's almost like our brains are wired for creative problem solving. It's like it just happens almost without any effort. But you got to have that connection. You got to get to that point where you have that connection, and that's so from conflict to connection, then to creativity, to problem solving. So there is sort of that dynamic, and I see that as a culture of empathy would value, just like you're talking about, would value that connection, have all those supports. So I guess I really agree,
Yeah, so what I hear is that you also see this difference between being in connection and being in disconnection. And as soon as people are in connection, it seems that there is some collective function that starts, that creativity starts, kind of, and that it requires some form of connection or some felt sense of connection. And when that's there, kind of, there is some kind of creativity.
Yeah. And the solutions to whatever the problem is can come out. You just never know where the solutions come from. It can be a whole. It's like a whole. I know it from my own experience that just this door opens up to a new solution. It's a lot of fun. It's like when those creative moments happen. It's like it's an energetic, joy, fun. Like it's like the body kind of rewards you with, all kinds of drugs to. Like, hey, this is great. This is fun. This whole new, way of looking at things. So I think that's almost, if we can kind of tap into that, with the empathy, like a culture of empathy, to tap into that creativity, that would be a real motivation for people to want that, that culture to, yeah.
What I hear and also what I see in your body language, that there was this really excitement about this creativity, and I could see that in your aliveness yourself, that you sense this aliveness, this creativity, that it can have a great aliveness. And also I find it interesting that you are also looking for this point, like how do we get there? So that was nice to see your body language too, both this excitement and this preciseness, what you're looking for, this preciseness, like how can we get there? How do we?
Yeah, I feel fully heard. It's my time.
Yeah. Sophia, would you like to reflect back on me?
Yes.
So let me see what I want to talk about. Yeah, the first thing that comes into my mind is kindness. Not sure what I want to say, but kind of something with kindness, that it's. I noticed that for me, nonviolent communication and also empathy circles also have to do with kindness. And also, I noticed that kindness or gentleness is also a very big value for me. Kind of, I haven't thought about that so much, so I will try this now. But kind of to formulate what kindness and gentleness means for me.
Okay, so you want to sort of go on a journey about what kindness it is? Is that what I'm hearing? And you want to talk a little bit about that? And kindness and gentleness, I heard.
And one thing, what I sense is that for me, kindness is an important value, kindness and gentleness. I also notice I have been in communities where a lot of things are very well organized, but I couldn't sense the kindness. I couldn't sense there is kindness here or so. And I notice even when all the structures are there, when there is no kindness, that still feels for me like there's not necessarily a community that I want to live in, kind of. So, and then it's kind of, okay, what is kindness? I think kindness or gentleness, I find it very hard to describe it in a way that it's a felt sense.
Can I just reflect?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You said that kindness is a big value for you, and you have been in organizations, and it seems like when you saw that it lacked kindness, it sort of made your it sort of enlarged your value. You saw that value even clearer. Yeah. And then you said that kindness is a felt sense to you.
And then, yeah, for me, kindness and gentleness are close to each other. So I also try to see if I can, with gentleness. For me, it has something to do with kind of soft movement or so, kind of. And maybe what I can say is that for me, I notice when there is kindness or gentleness, it makes it easier for me, for myself, to stay with my heart. And in a way, if there is this hardness or so, kind of, it brings me easily to my head, kind of. And I know that, I think that's also the quality that I sense of kindness, that it's it allows me to stay with my heart or with my own kindness. And if the kindness is not there, it's kind of easy for me, or kind of I easily go to thinking and defending and trying to figure things out and to.
Yeah, so you mentioned that kindness and gentleness are pretty similar to you, and it sounds like you believe that kindness is when you're in the heart, and the opposite of kindness is being in the head. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, in a way, kind of, if I would explain it as a movement, that kindness and gentleness are more flowing, and the opposite is more. So that's, and I think that's also an important aspect. What I would like to see in a culture of empathy, or a culture of that it kind of that it values, also nurtures, and supports kind of kindness or gentleness.
So kindness are soft moves, it sounds like, and the opposite of kindness are kind of like harsh. That's what I'm hearing. And yeah, in the culture of empathy, you bring forward kindness
Mm-hmm.
to you. Yeah, is that correct?
Yeah, and I also notice, for me, kind of in a way, it also has to do with sensitivity. I know it's for me to be sensitive. If there is kindness around, it kind of really helps me to come or stay with my own sensitivity. Kind of, I notice I'm way more sensitive and way more sensing when there is some kindness, and when I sense some kind of harshness, kind of that's the first thing that kind of closes down. So for me, kind of living in a culture of empathy, or a culture, it would be something that, yeah, supports this kindness, this gentleness, and yeah.
So a culture of empathy supports kindness and gentleness, and you have also noticed that you have sort of sensitivities to when you're in environment that are harsh, you sort of close down. But when there's kindness in the environment, you become more sensitive and sensitive.
Yeah. And I also notice, kind of, when I'm speaking right now, kind of, I find it also interesting for myself to put that in words. I didn't do that so much before, so kind of, I also feel the joy, kind of giving attention to that, giving for myself now. That's nice to just by naming it and putting some time in it now to describe it. But it's also, I feel some joy in there. There's some joy in me, like, oh yeah, some the joy of taking space for that, the joy of taking time for that, and the joy of probably the joy of your attention, kind of, with that.
So you're feeling some joy because you're giving the subject of kindness space, and you feel joyful about that.
Yeah, thank you. I feel fully heard.
Thank you. Edwin.
Listening.
I was sitting here thinking, like, what do you mean about culture of empathy? It just feels so big. So you if you feel joy answering that, and when it's your turn, you can give. I think I need some more. I feel some confusion about that.
So the term, when you hear culture of empathy, you feel some confusion about it because it just seems so big, and you're hoping that I'll speak to it when it's my turn.
Yes. And the things that I'm thinking about is that I would like to see it happening in schools when children are very young, because I think though the children are most adaptive, is that the word? More, yeah, open to learning things. And I believe that trying to teach older people, if they're not open to it, I don't think there's much hope there.
Mm-hmm. You think that for teaching empathy and a culture of empathy, that children would be more open to it. Maybe if it was taught in the schools, because they're kind of more open to new things versus adults who are maybe more closed and set in their ways.
Yeah. And I think for an adult to be sort of like open to empathy, they truly have to be ready for it, because I have noticed that some people just aren't. They aren't interested in empathy.
So for an adult to be interested in empathy, that there has to be a willingness and an openness to it, and if they don't have that, you've seen that it just doesn't really work.
Yeah, and then there's the question comes in. Yeah, but somebody has to teach these children empathy, and that has to be adults. So I've been thinking about that, how to do that.
So you're just sort of thinking about how to bring empathy training into the schools, and you realize it sounds like it's almost like a challenge. Well, it's adults, but maybe the adults aren't so open to it. So you're just kind of like thinking, how would you really do that? Bring these skills or mindset to the schools?
Yeah. I have noticed that all the people that I've introduced this to have been very excited about it, and I've been using it to solve conflicts, and it's very pleasurable to solve conflicts in this way. So maybe there is some hope for people, some adults.
So you have some hope because you've seen people that you've introduced empathic listening to. They've liked it, and it's worked for addressing conflict. So there's some hope there, So
yeah,
maybe it's possible.
I used it with this guy that I was dating because we had some conflicts. One conflict was about him snapping at me because he wanted me to stop doing something, and when this happened, I wasn't sort of like in the empathy mode, so I just stopped doing that. Yeah, you can reflect.
So you did use it with this guy that you were in a relationship with. Did he snapped at you, and then you sort of responded? It wasn't quite clear. You said you were in an empathy mode.
No, I wasn't.
You weren't.
Yeah. But then I brought it up at another point, and because I had already introduced empathy to him, and I said that, can we do this in a more connecting way? Because I want to give you empathy about this, and I would like some empathy also about what happened in me. And that was very connecting, and it felt like we really cleared the air there.
So you were able, right? It sounds like in the moment you weren't able to use empathy, but a little bit later you invited him into doing like mutual empathy, and it actually worked to clear up the issue.
Yeah.
And so feel some hope, or maybe even celebration about hey, this really worked.
Yeah, and he was so amazed about this because the usual thing is that we just tell people to stop doing something, and they either stop or they don't stop. But what happens in that connection, that sort of like you can either close yourself or you can sort of find out what really happened there. And he didn't know what was happening within me, and I actually didn't know why he snapped at me. And when we had the empathy, we got to know, oh, so I got more details about why he snapped at me. And we don't do that in our sort of regular life. We don't go into that deep. So he was really amazed about this process too. So that was fun.
Yeah. So when you did the empathic listening with him, you kind of had a deeper understanding of what the issue was, and he was like really amazed about this, because from your experience, people, if they're in a conflict, they just kind of shut down, or they just kind of, just all these different disconnections happen. People just kind of go on, either do it or don't. But here you actually understood each other. You're able to, create that connection, and he was amazed at it. And sounds like you're were enjoying it too, that you were able to solve it. Well,
And I really hope that I will get to the point where I have a relationship where we do this. That is the kind of culture of empathy that I want to bring into my life, my personal life.
Yeah, so you actually like to have a relationship where you have sort of a personal culture of empathy relationship, where you're kind of have the relationship built on this. Yeah.
Thank you. I feel heard.
Okay. Then I'll speak to Hugo.
Good to try on this computer now.
Okay, then, okay, good. Yeah, that's the whole notion of a culture of empathy is about giving a name to something, because I see, for example, both Sophia and Richard have done NVC work, but I see that NVC doesn't name the culture that we want. The name is nonviolence, but it's sort of like saying what we don't want. We don't want violence, but it's not clearly articulating what we do want. And that's where I think that the term a culture of empathy can come in, to sort of name what it is that we want. So that's kind of my motivation, one of my motivations for that clarity.
The first thing you want to say about culture of empathy is just giving it a name.
Mm-hmm.
And to say what we want instead of what we don't want. As NVC seems to state what we don't want, but you want to state what we want, and in this case, that's empathy.
Yeah, and because then you can kind of work towards it. If you have a clear vision of where you want and what you want, you can even have an agreement. It's like, this is the agreement of what the type of relationship we would want, sort of like a constitution. And also, it's sort of like the holacracy that Extinction Rebellion has. You say the vision that you want, and then people just self-organize towards that vision. But that's why having a clearly articulated vision, with the underlying principles, I think can help.
So the idea is to have a vision where we're going, so you can move forwards to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's something similar that Rebellion Extinction has.
Yeah.
And it seems to automatically, once there is a vision, there seems to be an automatic organization towards that goal.
Yeah. So, and then it's in family. The culture is everywhere, right? There's the family culture, and I think that's very powerful, that a family can say, we want a culture. Oh, and in fact, I do a mediation, family mediation. And I was just doing one last week. And I start off by saying our intention is to build a family culture of empathy where everyone feels heard, where everyone feels heard to their satisfaction. We're trying to support a culture of care and mutual support and love for everyone in the family. So we have a clear vision. And now I'm going to add kindness because that's another. It's like we want kindness in the family. So that's what I want, is be able to list those things and articulate the qualities of each of those, because I think that what Richard is saying is about have that felt bodily awareness, is really important. So yeah, so I'm saying a lot there, but.
Yeah, so you've been using this in families to create a culture of empathy for that particular family. You have been using words like support and care, and based on what Richard says, you'd like to add the word kindness to really articulate that vision and make it more concrete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, care and kindness is this feeling of warmth, right? We it's kind of what we want is that feeling of a family that's warm and just relaxed and these words kind of convey kindness and care, convey that warmth, which I think we probably all want.
You connect the words kindness and care to warmth and relaxed, and that's the kind of family you'd like people to be in.
Yeah, so we can have cultures of empathy in the family and in the schools, because we can create whole school dynamics, cultures. And the cultures is everything, like the personal relationships, the structure of the school, the architecture, like all these things kind of make up that full felt experience of the culture is what I see. So it is a big sort of a vision, like Sophia is mentioning, but yeah.
So the culture, it's not just about families, it's also about schools, and you'd like that to be a part of the entire school, including the architecture, including the way people communicate with each other.
Yeah, and the same way with the larger culture in general, our political culture. So there's just all these subcultures. Maybe that's it. Maybe we can create like in the 60s, they had the counterculture. We can have the empathy counterculture. And we need an empathy counterculture like in the 60s, something like that. We just came to mind.
Well, like in the 60s, an empathy counterculture that would stimulate people to do things differently.
Yeah, but unlike the 60s, it wouldn't be an us versus them. I think that's the problem I saw in the 60s was it became us, against the squares, or it was kind of demeaning to the, to other people. So something that's more inclusive and really offers to listen to everyone.
So the counter in the 60s was a real counter where you had us and them, and you'd like this to be something different where there's still a we with people who are in the other culture.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thanks.
Tomorrow, where
So
I came
first select who you want to speak to.
Can you listen, Sophia?
Sure.
I think something that I connect to empathy is also the word pain. And it seems to be very difficult to give empathy when I'm in pain myself, or for the other person to give empathy to me when they are in pain.
Yeah, so you're seeing that a block there, that what people who are in pain have, you've seen that they have troubles giving empathy, and you also recognize that within yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of bringing two parties in a conflict together. And at the same time, I see that the pain sometimes makes it difficult to be able to listen to the other person, to be able even to repeat what you've just heard, because there's this constant but, and there's the waiting. So when can I say my thing?
Yeah, so you're just emphasizing that it's really hard to listen when you're in pain, and you're have the experience that you just listen because you're waiting for your turn to talk yourself.
Yeah, and what I'd like is a society where we find solutions to heal the pain, to transform that pain, before we start trying to listen to other people.
So what you're seeing, your vision is that people transform their pain so that they can listen empathically. Is that correct?
Yeah. And including you were also expressing some of the pain whether you're not good enough. And I think that's a sentence that I said to myself also several times, and I heard it from a lot of people. So how can I heal that deep pain of being not good enough before I start talking to other people? Because it seems I need that healing before I can be really empathic.
So you resonated with me saying that I'm not good enough, and you have this sense that you need to heal that within yourself before you can listen empathically.
Well, not fully. I mean, there's this, as you said, it's still there, and there's some part of it that's that still can feel that pain. But to be able to be with that pain without being scared of it.
So you don't believe that you need to fully heal it, but be able to be with it without being scared of it.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of healing to be done before we can reach that state where people feel that they are able to be in the same room with their pain or their fear or their anger.
Yeah, you're seeing that we as a humanity need to be able to be in the same room as our fears and insecurities. We need to be with that.
And besides these empathy circles where two different visions can come together, I think it would also help to have some empathy buddies who go to the people who still experience that fear or anger or pain.
So besides empathy circles, you also envision people having empathy buddies so that they can process their pain with that. Is that correct?
I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just felt very touched listening to Hugo. Yeah, and I can really relate to what he's saying.
So what I hear is when you heard Hugo that you feel touched and that you also can relate to what he is saying.
Yeah, and when talking about because now I feel like I have a more sense of what Edwin wants is thinking about this culture, the culture and culture of empathy. And you mentioned kindness, Richard, and of course empathy would be included. But one thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately is taking self-responsibility. So when I'm interacting with other people, I don't make them responsible for my emotions. I think that is a huge part of being empathic, actually.
So what I hear is that it's more clear for you now, kind of when you heard from Edwin, what he is aiming at or what he likes to achieve with those meetings or with his vision, and for you also kindness resonated with you. And one thing that you mentioned is that a big value for you is also a value that you mentioned is self-responsibility. And that's also something that you see in this, in those values that are being mentioned, that self-responsibility is an important value for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was talking about that I've been taking part of something that is called circling, and that the basis of circling is being responsible for your emotions, and that is something that I don't see in our society, that people are taking responsibility for their what they're feeling. They're blaming other people for their pain and suffering, and I think we need to sort of like turn that around so that people become aware of that.
Yeah. So what I hear is that you also are doing some circling as a practice. And it also helps you to remind you about the value of self-responsibility. And what you see is, I think you use the words blaming and shaming in society. And I think I heard some sadness or some, also hearing that you would like to live in a society where self-responsibility is a value, and not just a value, but also that it's practiced by people, and that the self-responsibility, that it gives you something, some kind of.
Yeah. I'm not sad. I'm just feeling stuckness in my nose. I don't think that. Yeah, I didn't think that was heard. Yeah, and I don't know how empathy is one part, I believe, giving others empathy, reflecting back what they are saying, but there also has to be one element of people being sort of like, so that's because blaming and shaming ultimately creates disharmony in relationship. So that was what you were talking about, this blaming and shaming game that we need to stop. Yeah,
So what I hear is that you mention, and also that you see, that empathy is an important pillar, but you also see that self-responsibility is an important pillar, and that it's you also mentioned the blaming and shaming, and also use the word game, that is something that you don't see as effective, or that's something that's, and that you would like to see self-responsibility, and that there is, I'm guessing, is there some freedom coming from that, or what does self-responsibility give you?
yeah. I'm sitting with what is not a culture of empathy, and blaming and shaming is the opposite of culture, a culture of empathy. It's very hard to define what it is, but it's not blaming and shaming.
So what I hear is that you are aware that we are, or that you are defining now what is not a culture of empathy, and at the same time there is some real clarity with you that blaming and shaming is definitely not a culture of empathy for you.
Yes, thank you. I feel heard.
Yeah. So yeah, it's partly because I find it a really interesting experiment. Hugo, would you like to give me to reflect back on me? This kind of, it's also an experiment. Is this going to work, and how is this going to work? So yeah, I'll try both through the screen and through face-to-face. Kind of, it's the first thing that I sense is that I feel this joy of experimenting. Also, maybe it's a little bit like playing outside the structure, and there's a little bit rebel energy, and there is this joy of, okay, let's do something that that I don't know what's going to work, but it sounds like exciting. So.
You have joy because you're experimenting outside of the structure and you feel a little bit rebellious to it. You like experimenting.
Yeah, thanks. It's also interesting that you look for me from the side, so I enjoyed it. Yeah, on the subject, one thing that for me also is important with the value of or something of the pillars of a culture of empathy, I think for me would be appreciation. Appreciation or some kind of appreciative acknowledging. And I also noticed that for me, kindness and gentleness come in there. That it's kind of this appreciation, like it's nice that you're here. It's nice that you express yourself. And even if you have pain, there is some appreciativeness, some welcomeness. Like, hey, you know, there is a space. There is a space for it. I think that's a cool phrase. Like, there is a space for what makes you human, that you are a human and that you are sensitive and that you are expressing yourself and that almost nobody knows exactly how to express himself or herself, and that there is pain and that all these things are welcome and that they are not just tolerated, but that they are appreciated. I think that's for me something that I feel is important.
So the thing I'd like to add is the appreciation that the other person is there and expressing themselves, and that there is a space for it. And it doesn't matter how they express it, but there is space for it, and you'd like people to at least acknowledge and appreciate that they're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm gonna experiment a little further. So, and for me, I also, what I see that a lot of times that appreciation is also kind of something that's very easy to start with. That it's even if the other person doesn't join, it's something that I can start with doing myself, and that by being appreciative, I don't have to explain so much. I don't have to come up with big theories how things work. I can just start appreciating, and that's for me. I'm not sure why I say that, but it has some quality of, you know, it's a starter that you can always start with appreciating. And if I start appreciating, it often invites people to come into this state where I would like to connect to.
It seems to be a very easy to do tool or structure in empathy by starting to just start with saying, I appreciate you're here.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that you're sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be a first step, which is easy to do and creates a lot of openness and kindness and possibilities to share and to get empathy.
Yeah. And what I also noticed for me, it's like, I think that appreciation, when I see a culture of empathy also as a self-practice, or a practice that how can I appreciate or accept or welcome a whole broad range of things, and not the things that are nice. You know, if somebody gives me a cookie, that's nice, but also, you know, if somebody is not nice to me, that I still can appreciate that either to the person or to the universe and say like, hey, this is, yeah, thanks for the reflection, or thanks for the universal feedback, something like that.
You also see it as a way of self-practice by trying to, whatever somebody comes up with, to keep saying, you know, I welcome that it's here, and I try to accept it, and I appreciate that you're expressing yourself. Even the painful things or the things that you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Keep appreciation as a basic form of empathy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and the playfulness I want to take back to the screen. I try to the screen again. I didn't see any minutes, so do I have some time, Edwin?
30 seconds.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I do see kind of. I'm not sure if it's a special place, but kind of definitely a special mention for appreciation and. So culture of empathy also has for me a built-in practice of appreciation in some way or another, or some awareness. I think some awareness of maybe it's also positiveness, some kind of a willingness to focus at the positive things, and a willingness to focus on the things that connect. Although there can be a lot of things that disconnect, that there is this awareness, like, hey, if I focus on the positive things, then positive things grow, or that it becomes bigger. And yeah, I sense it has, for me, has to do with the willingness. Kind of, there is this willingness and awareness, like, yeah, I choose to be positive, or something like
Well, one reason to use appreciation is to see where you can also focus on the positive thing. And the positive thing is that we are connected and that we are expressing ourselves, even if the things that we're expressing might not be positive.
Mm-hmm.
And this positiveness seems to be this very strong way to feel that connection.
Yeah, and for me, a really important aspect there is this willingness. Yes, I choose to be, and it's something that you cannot demand from people, but people can utter that in some sense. Yes, I'm willing to choose to focus on the positive things, without saying it's bad to. But there is some willingness. There is some willingness for me.
Even if people are not able to be positive and give appreciation, you'd like to at least express that there is a willingness and there is a wish to go that path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think also there's something that, like, this willingness, there is something, and maybe it also has to do with self-responsibility, or something like making a choice or so, that there is the choice. Yes, I choose to be in connection, and to be in connection means to appreciate and to welcome, and to, even if there is pain, there is this yes, there's this big yes that's there.
What you'd like people to have is a big yes to say, whatever there is, I have the willingness to listen and to see you beautiful and with whatever you come to this place to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. I feel fully here.
Edwin, could you listen again?
Listening.
As Richard was talking, I noticed that we're getting back to one of the first things he said, which is this whole feeling that we are connected. And in a way, when my oldest son was in the hospital, I had to deal with a lot of doctors who had completely different ideas about how to heal him. And that made me feel very much disconnected. And the way out of it was to, at some point, see what we had in common.
So you're kind of going back to what Richard started with about connection, and what's coming up for you is when you were in the hospital with your son, that you had different views about the doctors, and it seemed like there was a sense of disconnection. It sounded like you found a way of trying to find connection through finding similarities with them.
Yeah, and the similarity was that we both wanted him to do the best possible for him, and to get him to be better again, and to be healed, and to be safe, and that helped me to reconnect to them.
Mm-hmm. So just seeing that you had your son's well-being in common that helped create a sense of connection with the physicians for you.
Yeah, and at the same time, there was also this pain, which was about, they don't see what I'm trying to do. They don't see. So it was a constant inner battle between. I see the connection that we both want the same thing, which is to get him better. At the same time, this disconnection that we have a completely different view on how to reach that. And I see that as a constant moving from one side to the other, which sometimes makes empathy very difficult.
It's difficult to have empathy when even if you have the same goals, that you have different ways of reaching those goals, and you're kind of going back and forth between those different goals, and that makes empathy difficult, having those differences, different strategies or different approaches.
What I liked about Richard's approach is that he said, well, you keep being appreciative and keep looking for the things that you have in common, to see whether you can keep creating a common reality. And maybe common reality is another thing to add to this culture, is that we try to figure out what is a common reality that we're trying to reach.
So part of having this culture of empathy is trying to find sort of the commonalities. It sounds like it's an ongoing, trying to find those commonalities. I don't know if I quite got that.
Yes, it's partly the willingness to look for a common reality, and it's also I notice that when I see a common reality, I feel more connected to people. And so it helps to look for that common reality, that I can share more with these people, and that I feel more connected to people.
So a core part of it is really having just a willingness to find that connection and find that commonality. So it kind of starts with this feeling of willingness, which Richard has talked about.
And maybe sometimes it's there is this sentence to agree to disagree. And when you say that sentence, you can put the focus on the disagree, but you can also put the focus on the agree. Because the focus, when we put the focus on the agree, then I feel connected. Whereas when I put the focus on disagree, it's very difficult sometimes to connect.
So having a disagreement can create disconnection. And if you can just say, well, we agree to disagree, then you have something in common. And if you put your focus on that, it creates more of a feeling of connection. So it's a bit of a trick or something to find that agreement within a conflict or disagreement.
Yeah, and I talked about healing pain and anger and fear, and that means to at least acknowledge the pain is there and fear is there, and whatever unpleasant feelings and thoughts there are. So that's a part too. I mean, that helps if people are able to do that.
So the healing, you see healing from pain is to just acknowledge that the pain is there. So you have to start by even sort of acknowledging that there is a feeling of pain.
And at the same time, to create an empathy, a culture of empathy, we also need to have some feeling that we are connected, that we have things in common, and that maybe we have more things in common than the things that are different.
So to create this culture of empathy, for example, if people are really polarized and just have no commonality, it would be hard to create a culture of empathy. So they have to have some sort of commonality to begin with to work on that, creating that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the 5 minutes too.
I feel really hard.
Okay, I'll speak to Sophia.
I'm listening.
Okay, yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's like, hey, yeah, I've been wanting to sort of explore the nature, this culture of empathy, and everything I'm hearing is so salient and so pertinent, and to this whole kind of search, that it feels very energizing and enlivening, and I'm really enjoying it. Yeah.
So you're feeling a lot of joy and excitement about what you heard in this circle, and everything feels very potent to you.
Yeah, and especially like the aspect of the pain, the aspect of it does seem to me that the empathy is the mechanism for healing pain. That the pain, a lot of the pain is probably from disconnection. And so the way to heal the pain is to use empathy to create connection. So it is healing. Empathy is the healing agent. It's sort of like the medicine on the wound that's causing pain.
Yeah, so you feel very fascinated about this subject of pain, and you see empathy as a healing modality to heal this pain. And I'm hearing you say that you believe that disconnection is you believe that created pain, and by bringing empathy and you connect again, and then you heal it.
Yeah, and the healing is maybe the integration. Like there's some kind of disconnection that's painful. We're just wired for that when we feel disconnected. And the empathy sort of reweaves. If it reweaves. If there's a big gash, you're with the empathy. It's sort of suturing. It kind of sutures that up. So it's kind of doing that with with presence and all these other qualities are part of it, to kind of, just like with your relationship, right? You had that conflict, you got into empathy, and then it kind of healed. Everybody understood each other, and you just felt, oh, this has been resolved. So and that was painful. So again, it was the empathy that was the curative aspect. Yeah.
Right. So what I'm seeing is I'm seeing a vision, as you're seeing disconnection as a gap, and empathy is sort of like sewing that gap together. And you took my example of this conflict that I had with this guy as a sort of example for how that could, there was disconnection and we created connection again.
Mm-hmm. Through empathy. Yeah. So
through empathy, yeah.
So yeah, it's there was something I was thinking, I just lost it. It'll come to me. It's about the empathy and disconnection, and yeah, it's just the pain. Oh, I didn't know what it was. It was Hugo had sort of mentioned it about you need empathy buddies. So in doing a mediation, there's these family members are in such deep pain. It's like you bring them together just on their own. It just doesn't work. Things blow up. It takes about 2 seconds. Somebody says something and the whole, discussion just blows up. Everybody feels in pain because if that pain is so near the surface. So we need, like, if the pain is here, we need a whole empathic support system to heal that. You need a whole team, just like with Hugo's son. It wasn't just one person. It's probably a whole team, a whole all the physicians were there to heal that pain. In the same way, I see that with the conflict, if the parties don't have enough resources to empathize with each other, you have a mediator that kind of listens to each person separately. So I'll listen to one party, then go and separately listen for half an hour, just do an empathy, give them an empathy bath. And that kind of helps them to start feeling heard. And so there's a whole resources that are needed to heal that pain. And I think that the core part is empathy to heal the pain, but we need support structures for that.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're referring to Hugo's mentioning that we need an empathy buddy, and then you took this example of mediating families where they actually it actually can make it worse if you put them together immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But it's better to separate them and make them feel heard, and then put them together. So you're talking about we need this kind of support system for each other, because sometimes it's not possible to put people together and just solve it with empathy. We need support also.
And that, just in short, because we're out of time, is the culture of empathy is a whole culture that supports that, right? It's all the institutions, all the systems support bringing people together. So, yeah, for that.
Mm. Yeah, so the culture of empathy is just that kind of support that you're talking about right now.
Yeah. So, okay, well, I feel fully heard, deeply heard. And I see we just have 15 minutes, about 14 minutes, even less, 13. So we're going to go back to the main room. So thank you very much for this. And so we'll be going back in about 60 seconds. So we're getting some strange sounds. So there we go. Okay, everybody should be coming back in within 30 seconds or so. Okay, just waiting for the other group to come back.
Oh, well.
Okay, so yes, kind of interrupted you probably there. Make it more, but only got a 60-second warning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me stop the recording because we